Is Nico Iamaleava Tennessee's most important player right now? In other words, I'm pointing the finger at Lance Hurd. I think he's the most important player for Tennessee, Caleb. And I've got real concern still about Hurd, even though he played better against Alabama, especially in the final three quarters. But I can't sit here and tell you that Nico's the most important player, because if Lance Hurd doesn't do his job, then Nico can't do his job.
So you're asking me if Nico or Lance Hurd is more important?
Yes.
Well, I wasn't even going to go with Nico because, I mean, I wasn't like, just in general, is Nico the most valuable player on the Vols offense, period? Like, what about Dylan Sampson, Cooper Mays? You brought up Lance Hurd. I'm going to still say yes with Nico, and here's why. Where do you go if he gets hurt? And just to give you an example real quick, we talk about the 98 team all the time. Al Wilson was the star of that team. Peerless Price was the weapon on offense. Jamal Lewis before he went down. Deion Grant. We always talk about how T. Martin was kind of more the game manager that just made the play when needed. But Dave, if there's one player you couldn't afford to lose, it was T. Martin, because then Joey Matthews comes in. And I think you and I both agree, if Joey Matthews is starting in any of those games against top 25 teams, Tennessee's not winning a national title.
Yeah, and then with Gaston Moore,
was it Bernie Veazey? Maybe it was him. Sorry.
I don't want to hold it again. I don't want to hold one play against Gaston Moore because he just ran into the game when Nico got banged up. So it's a little unfair to do that. But I will say this with Gaston Moore, I feel like if for whatever reason they wanted to bench Nico because they thought that they had a better chance to win with Gaston Moore, or Nico, God forbid, was hurt, and they had an off week in there, I think they could have a package, assuming Lance Hurd plays well and the other offensive tackle, John Campbell Jr., plays well. But again, that gets back to my point. And football is the ultimate team game. If those guys don't do their job, Caleb, then it doesn't matter who the quarterback is.
No, I mean, that's a very good point. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is if they don't do their job. But that's with any team ever, is if those guys don't do their job, it doesn't matter who the quarterback is to a certain degree. But we'd still say the quarterback's the most important player on the team. I think, I guess we were looking at it differently. So, like, is he the most important? Is he the most valuable? I think in every way you look at it, Nico is, and I don't say this just because he's the quarterback. I say this because of who's behind Nico. If Lance Hurd goes down, Dave, I think you and I both agree there may even be an upgrade if you have to put Dane Davis out there as of right now, given the way Lance Hurd has played.
If he could focus on one position, yes. And I like Larry Johnson more than maybe a lot of people.
But they're working Johnson at right tackle more, aren't they?
Yeah, and he still needs to get stronger. Now, once he gets his mitts on you, he's pretty good, and his footwork isn't great. But I think that he is a player that is going to start to prove Josh Heupel right in his offensive line evaluation from high school and subsequent development. So I think he's one of those players that's going to do that.
I could give you X factor with Lance Hurd. How about that? Lance Hurd is the primary X factor for this offense going forward.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this. We haven't even said the name that I wrote about this morning and why he should be in the Heisman race, Dylan Samson. Now, would this team win more or less games if they were without Dylan Sampson or Nico Iamaleava? I know this sounds like heresy based off what we said in the preseason. I'm well aware that we have a totally different approach. But, Caleb, I'm just if you go, you think it's okay, but if it's not Samson, it's Bishop. And we would all agree that Bishop isn't big enough to be a featured back, correct?
Yes.
And not good enough in pass protection because of his lack of size. Correct. So then would you go Selden? Peyton Lewis looks like he's on his way to a red shirt.
Probably. I mean, my gut tells me they're trying to just redshirt Peyton Lewis, like you said. And so they just to save the year, but they may burn it if Samson got hurt. And also, look, Samson's valuable. Don't get me wrong, but you and I both agree, Dave, that that interior blocking is more important than the actual running back in a run game. Samson turns a 5-yard gain into an 8-yard gain, but this interior blocking creates the 5-yard gain. Without it, you don't even have the 1-yard gain. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because I think the collection of Cooper Mays and Javonte Spraggins and Andre Carrick is more. I'd rather have Cooper Mays than Dylan Sampson healthy. Put it that way.
I agree with you, but let me throw this out there at you. With Samson, he is an instinctive runner. Now that's not a given. I don't think Selden is yet. He played receiver in high school, and I think that's the reason he's not playing. So I think maybe you're underselling Samson just a little bit on how he maximizes yards because he's not as flashy as a Chuck Webb or some of those guys back.
Okay, but without Samson, put it this way. Here's what I'll give you a great example. If Samson goes down, Tennessee turns into the 2000 Ravens, where it's like the offense is not going to be good, but they can get you like, okay, the defense. So what they can do is go to the defense and be like, how many points do you need us to get you? And the defense can say, get us 10 points. And in the offense, you could theoretically go do that, right? They could go get you 10 points.
Theoretically, yes.
If Gaston Moore is in the game, the offense can't go get you 10 points. Okay, and I think that's the problem. Then it turns into this year's Titans offense with Will Levis and Mason Rudolph, where the defense will hold opponents to under 200 yards and still give up 52 points because the offense keeps spotting them the ball at their own 25-yard line. Okay, so at that point, that's what the Titans become with Gaston Moore. And I'm not trying to hate on Gaston Moore. He didn't want to be in this position, but Merklinger's clearly not ready. Or I guess more fair example, the offense turns into the 2005 Tennessee offense, Dave, where the defense is like, we'll hold them under 10 for you. And the offense is still like, we don't know if we can score 10.
See, I think it would turn into last year's offense, and that would be a lot of horizontal screen passes and that sort of thing, and they wouldn't challenge vertically because of his lack of arm strength. With Milton, there was another reason for that. It was his lack of accuracy. It wasn't arm strength. Hound Dogs
of Knoxville challenged vertically with Milton. They took shots with Milton. A lot of times, he just didn't always connect.
Yeah. Well, maybe they'd still take vertical shots with Moore, but with his arm, it may just be like a 20-yard vertical shot.
Yeah, it would be intercepted.
Hound Dogs of Knoxville. Champions look good in orange. HDKnoxville.com. HDKnoxville.com. So, I at the end of the day, are you willing to say that Nico is still the most important player?
Yes, because of what happens if he goes down. And again, I'm going to go back to 98 amidst all the stars. Dave, if you were told you're covering the 98 team, like midway through, you're told one player is going to go down. Who's the number one player you don't want to see go down if you're Tennessee? You would have picked T. Martin, right?
Yes.
He's number one, even though he wasn't the best player on that team.
Yes.
Exactly. And it's because you were covering the backups that year, right? And you saw who they were.
Yes. I don't even really remember who they were.
They were Joey Matthews and Bernie Veazey.
Oh, good old Bernie.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure, like, that's why Tennessee could withstand Jamal Lewis going down for the year that year, because they had Travis Henry and Travis Stevens who could pick up the collective weight. They could win 2 games without Al Wilson, which, as you know, they won 2 games without Al Wilson. They probably could have won a couple of games without Peerless Price. T. Martin goes down. They ain't beating the ranked team that year.